things like that, right? Because there are so many different versions of even Windows, right? I'm going to do this little promo for Microsoft real quick. Okay, so here's Windows, and here's Windows OS. And did you guys know that the Windows OS actually started with version 1? No one really knows that because, that was way back. You knew that. Okay, Windows version 1. And then there was version 2, and then 2.1x. Then there was version 3, and then 3.1x. And then we come to know the Windows that probably a lot more of us can recognize the name. It was Windows 95, Windows 98, Windows 2000, Windows Millennium. And then we come to the one that probably most of us have all used, is Windows XP, right? And then there was like Windows Vista for a little bit, and now we're at the current version that we're at now is Windows 7, right? Have you guys used Windows 7? It's very good. All right, Microsoft people, all right. So, there's Windows 7, right? And Apple has gone through the same phase, right? There are so many different versions of Apple. And even the iPhone today, there's already 4 versions of the iPhone. And iPhone 4 came out like what? Maybe 7, 8 months ago? Did you guys know that in June or August sometime this year, that iPhone 5 is coming out? Isn't that already it's coming out, right? So there's all these different versions. And when we think about computers and phones and things like that, and a new version comes out, it's always kind of an updated, better version, isn't it? Isn't that true? But the versions that we think of when we think about ourselves, it's not always that way. Most of the time when we do a different version of us, it's worse and worse and worse. And why is that? Because the world tells us we're not good enough. The world tells us we're not skinny enough. Right? I mean, come on. It's true, right? The world says we're not pretty enough, right? The world says we need more, we need more, we need more. And the thing is, this book, what's so awesome about this book is that it tells us and reminds us that the best version of us is already in us. Right? God doesn't make things and decide to just throw it away. God makes things, and if there's a problem, He rescues it. Okay? And we have a lot of issues, don't we? We have a lot of problems, and we cause a lot of problems for God. Right? But what He did was He rescued us. And He sent Jesus Christ. And that's what this book reminds us, that the best version of you is already in you. Right? Redemption goes all the way back to creation. God created us with the best version in us already. John Ortberg really describes it well in chapter 1 of this book. And he says that, he had this old chair, right? And this old chair meant a lot to him. Because what he did was, his grandfather and him built this chair together. Now this is a picture of just a chair that I found online. I couldn't find the one that he was talking about in his book. But this is just to give you guys an idea. And what happened was this old chair got old. And it got really old. So what happens to old things? It kind of gets, blemished a little bit. There's tears, It's not the same chair that it used to be. And it's worn down, and it's not really good for anything anymore. So what happened was he had a garage sale, and he put the chair in the garage sale, and some guy came up and bought it for 50 cents. Right? And this guy bought it for 50 cents. He's like, all right, 50 cents is not really worth much anymore. So then 3 months later, he gets a picture in the mail. And this guy refinished and rebuilt this chair and made it look brand new and even better than new. And then so John Ortberg was thinking, wow, I wonder if he's going to send me the chair, right? Wouldn't that be the perfect story, right? Like I sold this thing to this guy for 50 cents, and all of a sudden he refinished it and he's going to send it back to me. That never happened. No, that never happened. It wasn't a perfect story. But what he did was he hung that picture up in his office, and what it reminds him of is this: the old is gone, the new is here. And that's what this book is. The old is gone, the new is here. God's best version of you just needs a little refinishing. Isn't that awesome? Isn't that encouraging? I mean, to know that the best version of you is already in you. That's awesome. It doesn't have to be a new thing. That's really what I believe really discourages us sometimes. When we talk about new creation, you have to be a new creation. You don't have to change that much. You just have to refinish and get that good that's coming out of you. So let me ask you guys a question. Who thinks about God all the time? If you do, raise your hand. Like 24/7, every second of the day. Who thinks about God all the time? Do you think about God all the time? No one? Anyone? Anyone? I'll give you a little time to think about it a little bit. No? No one? Okay. John Ortberg has this story. And it's about an Ethiopian woman. She's 99 years old. She's blind. She's illiterate. But she has two versions of the Bible in her possession. One in English and one in her native tongue. And what the people did around her village, she lived in this little hut. And someone new would come in every day and read her the Bible. So then what happened was, as she was listening and her heart was being changed, she learned to memorize the Bible. And what happened was, people from miles and miles and miles away, from different villages, would come to her so that they could hear her recite the Bible. So the question is, why would anyone travel miles and miles and miles to listen to an old 99-year-old lady who was blind, who was illiterate, recite the Bible? The reason is, it's because her mind was renewed. Her hut became an outpost for the kingdom of God. What these people wanted when they came, they wanted what she had. They wanted a heart full of God and of His love. So the habitual patterns of your thoughts determine what kind of person you will be. The habitual patterns of your thoughts determine what kind of person you will be. Now, Pastor Fred last week shared with us Romans 12:2. And it reads like this: "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect." You see, the transformation of our lives starts with the transformation of the mind. The transformation of our lives begins with the transformation of our mind. Now, without aiming for the renewing of our deepest habitual patterns of thought, we will not become the me I want to be. Now, this is John Ortberg, and let me repeat that for you one more time. Without aiming for the renewing of your deepest habitual patterns of thought, we will not become the me I want to be. Wouldn't life be easy if there was nothing else in this world but God? We gather almost every Friday with the youth. And this past Friday, some of the youth, we were talking about contentment. And we were talking about how we need to be content with God. And some of the kids said, "Man, I wish I could be like out in the woods or someplace secluded, and it was just God and me, and we would be so content." Because, right? And the thing is, and then some of the other kids jumped in and was like, "Yeah, wouldn't it be awesome if we could be at like a retreat 24/7, 365 days a year? I mean, if we are at a retreat all the time, then we know that we're praising God, we're praying, we're doing the things that we're supposed to do. And then what happens is, what they pretty much said was that God is always watching, right? We know that God is always present, and that, when we're at a retreat, we hold each other accountable, and the thing is like, we won't do anything bad, right? That's kind of what they said. And that's kind of what they were thinking. When EJ and I drive, usually it's me that's driving. So we're in the car, and EJ is this real big stickler on speeding, okay? And she'll really she'll always kind of keep one eye on the speedometer, and then anytime I go over the speed limit a little bit, she's like, slow down, right? She's like this. So then I'm driving, and some of the times EJ kind of falls asleep while I'm driving. So then she's like this, and she's like sleeping, and I'm looking over at her, and when she falls asleep, I kind of go, speed up a little bit, and then we're speeding up, and then all of a sudden, I keep constantly looking over, but then sometimes she'll wake up, and then she'll look over, because the first thing that probably comes into her mind is the speedometer, right? So then she's looking over, and then she'll snap at me, and she'll slow down, right? And so then the thing is, what the habitual patterns of our thoughts, okay, determine when I know that she's not watching, I act a lot different than when I know that she is watching. Isn't that so true? Many of us drive. Most of us do. When you guys see a cop behind you, how do you drive? You guys are the best drivers in the world, right? You guys are man, it's like taking a class again, right? You guys are following every single rule in the book. But what happens when the cop isn't there? Are you guys speeding a little bit? Are you guys using your signal? Are you guys stopping completely at a stop sign? Those things, the habitual practices that we have when we know that God isn't watching has to be the same when God is watching. You see, God doesn't want a forced compliance. When the cop is behind us, he's forcing our compliance. You see, God is so immense that if he was so visible, if he was too visible, then we would have forced compliance. Because he's so big. He's so immense. He's such a great power, right? But sometimes God seems invisible to us. And the reason why he seems invisible to us is so that we can show him how much we love him. Amen. Jesus shares a metaphor. And it clearly illustrates this. And it comes from Matthew 12, 33 through 37. And it reads like this. Either make the tree good and its fruits good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For the tree is known by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you speak good things when you are evil? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The good person brings good things out of a good treasure, and the evil person brings evil things out of an evil treasure. I tell you, on the day of judgment, you will have to give an account for every careless word you utter. For by the words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. Isn't that scary? What comes out of your mouth? Whatever is in us, good or bad, it will leak out. Whatever is in us, good or bad, it will leak out.